already tested it.
Go for it.
Good morning, and welcome to First Presbyterian Church, Elizabethton. This morning's service is recorded and live stream broadcast on our church's YouTube channel, which can be found at fpcelizabethton.org.
Please report to the chancel area. Right after Rebecca does the bowl. All right, that's it. We're done. Go home. Merry Christmas. See you next week. Yeah, I don't know it's going to get any better than that. So, in the name of the God who created us, in the name of the Christ who teaches us, in the name of the Spirit who journeys alongside us throughout our lives, welcome home, children of God. Peace be with you. Good morning and welcome to First Presbyterian Church as we gather together as God's people in God's name. It is wonderful to be here this morning. I welcome all of you here, whether you're joining us in person or online. Thank you for being a part of the worship service this morning. Would you all please take a moment and just let us know you're here, either on those blue friendship pads or the YouTube chat, so that we can add up everybody after the service and give $1 to what is today's minutes. Today is the third Sunday of the month, the 15th. So the recipient of today's Everyone Counts is Shepherd's Inn. You're going to hear about them in just a minute during our alternative giving, but know that just by showing up to church today for worship, whether that is on YouTube or here, you are helping to support the work that Shepherd's Inn does. So thank you. Just a couple of quick announcements before we hear about Shepherd's Inn and alternative giving. Christmas dinner is next Sunday evening. Coming up fast. So please mark your calendars. We'll gather at 5:30 downstairs. We'll have a wassail bowl. We'll have dinner together. We'll have some fun music, a good time together, light service, and sing Silent Night, all of that. Next Sunday evening. So come out and join us. It is always a wonderful occasion to celebrate together as a church family. The progressive dinner is going to be New Year's Eve again. Suzanne is here. Oh, yeah, come on up. While she's making her way up, just a reminder for all elders and deacons who are serving next year, that whether you are coming on new or returning, reminder that we have our workshop on the afternoon, right after church of January the 5th. You should have a sign-up form for that in your email, in the e-news, and the bulletin. Please do sign up so that I can have an accurate count for lunch that day. And if you have any questions, let me know, but please get that in if you haven't already had a chance to do so. Suzanne, you want to say anything about the progressive dinner?
Good morning, church. Christmas dinner, I still have some spaces for anybody that would like to sign up on the cleanup board sheet. The community life people don't need to bother. Some of them are already on here, but I expect if you'll be there, you'll be helping with that. I realized this morning that we've only really got a couple of Sundays before our progressive dinner. So I've got a sign-up sheet for the progressive dinner with the host name and the locations on here as well, if you want to take a picture of it so you'll know where you're going, and some timelines. So please sign up. The last Sunday before New Year's is going to be probably a little too late because I'm going to have to get all this information to the hosts. So these next two Sundays, to this Sunday and next Sunday, will be our big push. Please put in parenthesis how many people are coming, because I don't know if it's just you or your spouse or maybe your whole family, whatever. So give us some numbers so the hosts will all have an idea of the numbers of people that are coming as well. And if you know what you're going to bring, you can write that down also. And I think that's about it. Thank you so much. And you've got my email and my text on the e-news, and so if you miss this sheet or if you're online, feel free to call me. Thanks.
Thank you, Suzanne. Months this morning. Paul, you want to share a word about Shepherd's Inn and alternative giving?
Good morning. Merry Christmas. We are weird, aren't we? I understand that our church does things of some folks who visit with us. They say, I've never seen something like that before. I didn't know we did that here. Oh, what do you do? What's that bowl for, you know? And I just tell you, it's okay. I've been for 35 years. I've enjoyed the fact that I'm a little weird, you know, at First Presbyterian Church here in Elizabethton. A little. No comments from the peanut gallery. Thank you very much. But You know, the thing that I have been so impressed has been the extraordinary thoughtfulness of this church and this congregation toward things that are important rather than just getting poinsettias. You know, one of the poinsettias is beautiful. These are done by Scott. You know, thank you, Scott, and for doing that. And Gregory and Tom helped out too, and thank you all for doing this. And you know, we used to have a thing where we would all give poinsettias, we listed in the bulletin and all that, and then we had an arc that we worked with. And over the years, the Peacemaking Committee had come up with the concept of alternative giving, which meant instead of us doing things with flowers and trying to take money and get money out of our treasury and all those kind of things to make it work, it was decided that the congregation would do things for other organizations that would be meaningful for them. One of this year has been Barocco Village, that people can give in honor of someone else or in memory of someone else, and then those funds would go to that organization. It would be also to our Presbyterian Relief Fund that is extremely important in all the funds that stay in our community. And this also, I say with great humility, they've been so gracious to remember Shepherd's Inn every year as one of the recipients of alternative giving. And for those of you who are listening and being with us by YouTube, we invite you to listen carefully and do something for others by listing their name and putting a card in the back. And you can do this online, or you can do it physically, again, at the peacemaking table in the back. You know, for me to stand here and tell you about the Shepherd's Inn is truly preaching to the choir, you know, because you all have been so supportive from the very beginning. For 27 years, this congregation has seen the need that we need to support the work where women and children have a place to go in emergency settings. Whether it be 2 o'clock in the morning, or it be in the afternoon, or if it be on Christmas Day, my phone can ring or the shelter's phone can ring, and we can receive a call from 911 and invite us to, please, can you help us? And we have the door open, and whether it be Sandy or, in this case, Rose, or others that will be there, they bring them in and they work and they make sure they're safe. They sometimes come with nothing but the clothes they wear, and we work with that also. Over the 27 years, we've not been able to keep our shelter going for a little time period for sake of moving. We moved from one shelter to another. And there was another time when we had to redo our kitchen completely, and with gifts from the community, we were able to do it, but we were down. We couldn't take anybody in during that time. And a few months ago, we found that we had extraordinary rot that was coming through the ceiling. We had a leak over the RA room, which is resident assistance room, where we keep our monitors and all this kind of stuff for safekeeping. And that's where our RAs spend the night. And we had to replace the entire ceiling, and we had to tear out a window in the bathroom, and we had so much work that we really couldn't take folks in for a little while, and it's been on, but we are now. But it was quite hurtful, because this is the first time the community hasn't had us available, and it was quite a chore. Now, we worked 24/7 taking phone calls, but we were not able to go and bring them in for that period of time. And it is now at the point that we can't open up the upstairs portion because we had to tear off an outside exit from the upstairs. And hopefully the roofer that I have is going to come and do it. Well, he had heart surgery on Tuesday, so it was delayed again. But he will come back hopefully soon after Christmas, and will supervise it from his workers, and to get the roof fixed again, and so that we can put the outside exit where it needs to be, and have to build steps because we had to tear those out as well. I'll tell you this because, you know, there's a lot that goes on in maintenance, whether it be in a church or being a shelter. And I am so grateful for the fact that, you know, this church has been so supportive. And it's not because of Paul, who directs the music and all that. It's because you understand what it means for people who have no place to go, no one to whom they can turn, and there is, excuse me, I was trying to sneeze. There is the Shepherd's Inn. And every month, somebody, usually Brian, will stand up here and tell you alternative giving. Know this, whether it comes to us or any other agency that we're supporting, alternative giving or whether, not every month, but alternative giving or everyone counts, those checks come in thrilling to us. Sincerely thrilling to us. And also the relief of the food that we get a check every year from the Presbyterian because of the food the money you put in here for the 5 cents a meal program. So do know that we do our part and more so. And I thank you on behalf of the board of directors and all those women and children, those thousands of women and children who have been through, and those tens of thousands who have received calls from over the 27 years that we've given direction to outside. And you've let me use this church sometimes for even counseling when we can't take them in the shelter. By that, I mean that we are a federally protected property, and it's a non-disclosed location. So, and it is a stone's throw from our church practically. God bless you. Merry Christmas, and thank you. For the least of these you have done, my brethren, you have done unto me.
Thank you, Paul. Friends, as we continue in worship, we remind ourselves of the core of the gospel around which we gather, that God loves all of us and all people everywhere without condition and without exception. Because in our unique and beautiful diversity, every one of us is a reflection of God's image. That includes our unique and beautiful sexual and gender identities, lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, straight, male, female, non-binary, our racial and ethnic identities, black, brown, white, Asian, indigenous, our unique spiritual journeys, whether we're looking for wisdom and insight in Christianity and other religions and the world around us, in community. It includes all people, rich and poor, young and old, able-bodied and disabled, suffering and rejoicing, because God's love welcomes and embraces all people everywhere, without condition and without exception. And we'll strive to do the same. We give thanks for this ancestral Cherokee land on which we are gathered, for the loving waters of the Watauga and Doe River watersheds that nourish us. As we continue to worship, we commit ourselves once again to work for peace and truth and reconciliation among all people, and to respect each other in creation in everything we say and do. So let us worship.
Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me. The Lord has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and to release the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Today we light the third candle of Advent, the candle of joy. In the Gospel of Luke, we meet a God who brings good news to the poor, joy to the marginalized, and life to the weary. God of joy, help us to hear your good news. Share it with the world. Luke tells of shepherds, an unwed mother, and a baby born in a stable, reminding us that joy is found in the unexpected and the humble. God of the margins, help us to celebrate your presence among those who are forgotten and overlooked. As we light this candle, may we find joy in the God who meets us in the lowliest of places. Shine the light of your joy in us and through us again this Advent season.
I invite you to take just a moment of silent meditation. Take a deep breath. Settle into a comfortable posture. And take a moment. God of hope, peace, joy, and love, as we prepare to welcome you anew this Advent, may these lights guide us, inspire us, and remind us of your presence among us. Shine the light of your joy in us and through us again this Advent season. We invite us to stand. As you know, you'll find that as an insert in your bulletin. If you are joining online, I'm really sorry we tried to get this uploaded with the bulletin and I kept running into issues, so if you know the words, sing along. Otherwise, just enjoy our wonderful voices.
And if you will stand, and I will cue you when to go to the next verse. So just keep reading straight on through it. I'll tell you when to do verse 2, and then I will tell you when to do verse 3. So just follow right along. So it could be a little confusing, but I'll make sure you're there. Thank you.
Excuse me. Let me invite us to take a moment and greet each other in whatever way you are comfortable doing. If you're online, please enjoy the slideshow as we pass the peace with one another.
Got through it just fine, didn't we? Good. Good job. That was very haunting, very I'm sorry, I'm just, my mind is someplace else. Peace, mind you. Peace to you.
Upon hearing the news from the angel of her child to be born, Mary sang, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For the Lord has looked with favor upon me. Surely, from now on, all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is God's name. The mercy of the Lord will be known from generation to generation. God's strength has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. God has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. The Lord has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. God's servant people have been lifted up in remembrance of God's mercy, according to the promise made to our ancestors, to Abraham and Sarah, and to their descendants forevermore."
Thank you all. Bobby, thank you for reading this morning. I know every Sunday I start the sermon, I try to thank the musicians and the meditation and liturgists and everything. Just to let you all know, all of these musicians, and we have so many talented musicians in this church, it is wonderful to hear from all of them. All these folks have been practicing Christmas music since October or earlier. So there's a lot of work that has gone into what you are enjoying this Advent season. And we are just blessed with so much talent here and generosity of sharing that. So thank you to everyone. If you want to be a part of a musical group, if you just want to play on a Sunday with your instrument, if you want to join handbells or choir or an ensemble or anything, talk to Paul, talk to Joan. We would love to have as many of you up here as we can because it's fun making music together. So thank you to all of our musicians this morning and to everybody who's been hard at work trying to pull music together for several months now. We got 4 Sundays of Advent, 4 Gospels. Each one, we've talked about this each Sunday, reflects that particular author's perspective on where that author thinks readers ought to look for God in the world. We started with Matthew. Matthew had this focus on looking for God among foreigners and outsiders. Matthew's the one with the story of the Magi, the magicians who come from the East. They're religious outsiders. They're from a different country. And they're the first ones to see something unique about God. So pay attention to those on the outside, to the foreigners, those outside the faith, outside the borders. Mark, we looked at that last week. Mark's gospel invites us. Mark doesn't have a nativity story. There's no birth of Jesus, no Virgin Mary, none of that stuff. Mark starts right in with what Jesus does. And so his perspective, his invitation is, you want to see God at work in the world? Pay attention to what's happening, what our actions are, how we live our lives, and we will see the sacred partnership between God and people. Luke this morning, like the others, Luke has his own unique perspective. And I mentioned last Sunday, I think, that one of our family traditions is every year we watch a Charlie Brown Christmas. It is one of my favorites. I'm not sure if I've missed a single year since I was a little kid. We have it on video now, and so we may watch it multiple times at Christmas. And we were watching it about a week ago or something, and just like we do every year, you get to that little part, Charlie Brown is beating his head against the wall. He's so frustrated with everybody who's directing the Christmas pageant. And then Linus shares the true meaning of Christmas, right? And we all quoted along with Linus as he's, stands up there, and there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were sore afraid. It's one of the only times I ever read the King James Bible anymore, but I love that story. It's so poetic, and we all quoted along with Linus. And it occurred to me in preparing or kind of thinking about the sermon for this week, what an irony there is in that story, because every depiction of Christmas I see, from Charlie Brown Christmas to driving through neighborhoods like we did last night, looking at Christmas lights and everything, is this kind of pastoral, idyllic, peaceful manger scene. Everything's quiet and calm. There's a quiet sleeping little baby and shepherds standing around and maybe some magi holding some gifts. And so much of that Christmas story comes from Luke's gospel, but it's just this one little section lifted out. And if we take a step back and read the actual, the whole Christmas story in Luke's gospel, including what we heard this morning, it's not really a idyllic, calm, peaceful, pastoral scene. It's anything but. Did you pay attention to the words that Bobby read this morning? So what she read, it's okay. Maybe you didn't pay attention. We'll talk about it for a minute anyway. So this is called Mary's song, or the Magnificat. And this angel comes to Mary and says, you're going to have a child. The child is going to be holy. And then Mary, and don't miss the fact that it's Mary singing this about God in the world. This is a proclamation by a woman in a patriarchal society, and it is the beginning of the church. So don't miss this little thing that Luke slides in there too. And look at what she sings. God has scattered the proud. God has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. God has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. So if our question for each of these gospel writers is, where are you pointing us? Where is Luke pointing us to look for God in the world? Luke's answer is a radical upheaval of the social order. And Luke says this is where to look for the advent of God in the world, a kingdom that challenges the social hierarchies and economic systems that privilege the few at the expense of the many. Luke says this is what God is doing. You want to see God at work, that's where you look. And it's a theme that runs all throughout Luke's gospel, that the poor and those on the margins are at the center of God's redemptive work in the world. Just like each of the gospel writers, Luke has a specific audience. Matthew is writing to Jewish insiders, and he's challenging them to look outside their own faith. Luke is writing to a Gentile audience, but one that was themselves primarily poor and existing on the margins. And so Luke's audience are these early Gentile Christians living within the Greco-Roman Empire who find themselves on the margins. And so throughout the gospel, Luke lifts up and puts emphasis on Jesus' concern for those who are also struggling. He begins with this humble birth. Luke doesn't have kings from afar, foreign dignitaries in his account. The only people that notice and show up to see Jesus in Luke's account are shepherds, inauspicious day laborers. I mean, they are, there's nothing special about them. In Matthew, there are these foreign dignitaries that travel hundreds of miles by a star. Luke says, yeah, some shepherds are up in the field and they noticed something, so they came down to see. That's it. In Matthew's gospel, we have the Sermon on the Mount. If you probably at least heard of that, right? Jesus goes up on a mountain and proclaims this sermon. Luke has a lot of the same things that Jesus teaches, but in Luke's gospel, Jesus doesn't give that sermon from a mountaintop up above people. Luke says Jesus went to a level place where everybody else was and began to teach them. Matthew has these Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Luke has a different take on it. Luke doesn't spiritualize the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit. Luke says, blessed are you when you are poor, but woe to you who are rich. Blessed are you who are hungry right now. Not who hunger and thirst for righteousness, so that's a good thing too. But Luke says, blessed are you, blessed are you when you are hungry. But woe to you who are full now. In all of Jesus' parables, there's one and only one parable where any character in it gets a name. It's the rich man and Lazarus. That's a story in Luke's gospel. Lazarus is the only character in any parable that gets a name. He is the poor man outside the gates of the rich man. The rich man doesn't know his name. But then in the end, the roles are reversed. And Lazarus is the one in Abraham's bosom while the rich man suffers. So Luke's whole gospel has this theme throughout Jesus' stories and teachings. And the idea is that God's advent into the world is found through an upturning of the social order. That's a hopeful message for Luke's gospel readers, like for his audience, for the people that are reading this in the first century, who by and large also found themselves at the bottom of the social order. But what about us 21st century, relatively comfortable folks sitting in here in a heated and well-lit sanctuary and enjoying our Christmas season? What do we do with a kind of a message like this? And I gotta be honest, I'm kind of torn. Right, on the one hand, there are times when I long to see some serious shaking up of many of the things that our culture considers normal, considers as simply inevitable, or maybe even God's will. Ideas like that some just have to be wealthy and others have to be poor, and that's just the way things are created, and we can't do any different. Like that, in many ways, is just kind of the flow of our culture, and to swim against that or think otherwise is a challenge. Luke, I think, suggests that God has something different in mind. So while I do sometimes long to see that shake-up of some of these things that we just take for granted in our culture as inevitable, like there's an idealist in me that loves that and loves the idea of starting fresh and crafting a culture around a different set of values from the ground up. The other part of me recognizes that a radical social upheaval like that would be pretty uncomfortable for me. I mean, I live a reasonably comfortable life. We have a house, we have cars, we have food in our fridge, we have retirement accounts, we have money to go out to eat, to go on vacation. Like, we have luxuries that, if I'm being honest, I don't really want to give up for this radical social upheaval that Luke envisions. So I kind of ended the week thinking, well, maybe there's a way for Mary to sing about this and proclaim this, and all the people way up there on the top will suffer, all the people way on the bottom will be lifted up, and I'll just kind of be overlooked somewhere in the middle. I'm trying to be honest here, But I noticed something else about Mary's song. It's not in the future tense. It's not. Like, for a long time in my life, I kept kind of reading it as though she were singing about what God was going to do. Like, okay, great, this is some great thing God's going to do. But if you look at it, Mary's singing about what God has done. So even though Luke is writing to people in the margins, people who are struggling now, Mary's message is not just keep hoping and God eventually will fix things and you'll be on top. Mary is singing about what God has already done. That God is doing these things, has done these things, and will continue to do these things. And then throughout the rest of Luke's gospel, Jesus continues to do these things. When Luke's gospel ends, all that stuff isn't fixed, but it's this idea that God's already been at work in the past doing it. Jesus continues that work. And now whose work is it? See, I love it, Mary Beth. You're always a student in the back of the class who's got her hand. Oh, I know the answer. Yeah, right. It's our work. It's an invitation to continue this work that God has already done. And the other piece of that is like, if the idea is that each one of these gospel writers is saying, hey, we all know, we all are in agreement that God is at work in the world. Like, there was nobody in Luke's audience or Jesus' audience or Mark or Matthew's audience that thought, well, no, God's not in the world, we got to wait for God to come. They all understood God is already at work in the world. What the gospel writers are doing, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, is saying, yeah, you've always looked for God here, but let me invite us to look in a different direction. In Luke's direction, I think, is to invite us to see where people are at work challenging those cultural assumptions. working to kind of overturn some of the social order that we take for granted, even if it is unjust, even if it comes at the expense of those who are suffering. And Luke is saying, look to those places. When you see people challenging that, challenging those presumptions, working to do something different, God's at work there. Jesus continued his work there. Join in that work. Be a part of that. That's our invitation. Find where that's happening, or find opportunities to do that ourselves. Be a part of that. And I think what Luke suggests, what Mary sings about, is when we do that, we will find that God is already present and doing that work in our world, and we can be a part of it. Blessed be. Amen. So let me invite us to stand. We'll sing our doxology together. If you have an offering, give, feel free to bring it forward and drop it in the offering plates, and we'll sing together. My favorite hymns in the entire hymnal. So let's join Mary from her voice from 2,000 years ago, adding our voices to the song that she sings, hymn number 100.
Thank you.
bulletins. We'll offer that to one another. As we do, my encouragement, like each of these Sundays of Advent, is to look for God in new and unexpected places. In particular this week, find out who's swimming against the tide or how you can do that, and see if we don't see God at work in new and unexpected places.